I'm delighted to be with you and to share a few nuggets of truth from this Jewish festival. As we know, tradition infuses all of the festivals, and these are often prophetically applicable to our faith in Yeshua. Yesterday on Shabbat, we were exploring the message of Hanukkah and its relationship to the golden lampstand that Zechariah saw. And I was overjoyed to discover that the rabbis look not only at our role in society, but they saw a messianic and a prophetic link to it. The Golden Menorah, as you remember, has a tree on either side and its own supply of oil. The main purpose of the vision is to teach Zerubbabel what he will need in order to be able to accomplish the task that God has set before him, that of rebuilding the temple. And here we find the connection to the story of the Maccabees in their revolt against Antiochus Epiphanes and the Greeks. To illustrate this, let me quote to you from their own words in Book of Maccabees. And I'm going to read from chapter 3 and verse 18. Judas answered, "It is no hard matter for the many to be shut up in the hands of the few. And with God, the God of heaven, all is one. To deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle stands not with the multitude of the host, but strength comes from heaven." Just as Judah the Maccabee declares, Zerubbabel needs the help of heaven to be able to do what the Lord is calling him to do, the task of rebuilding the temple. One of the hidden lessons of Hanukkah is this, that God will make available to his servants, and that includes you and me, that there is a strength that comes from heaven to empower us to do what we are called by God to do, to accomplish the task that he sets before each one of us. You see, Zerubbabel must learn. It's not by might nor by power. It's not human strength or resources, not money, not power, not even talent. Not by the power of our will to achieve, but power that comes from God is what is required. The rabbis say that the vision teaches us not to rely on flesh and blood. In other words, not to rely on our own physical strength or even our wisdom, but rather we must learn to lean on the power of an omnipresent God. They remind us that what happened to Goliath when he came in the power of his height, in the power of his strength, and in the power of his past victories. And yet he fell, and all with him. When David stood with that small slingshot and took aim, but he did so in the power of God, and he felled that giant. He understood what the Lord needed to teach Jehoshaphat and what he must teach each one of us. In 2 Chronicles 20, we read this, "Do not be afraid or dismayed because of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's." This is what Judas knew when the Maccabees went against Antiochus. They went in the power of God. A ragtag band of priests and peasants defeated a wicked and powerful king who had sought to destroy the people of God by destroying the faith of the people, forbidding the practice of Judaism, setting himself up as God and defiling the temple with pagan sacrifices and doing the unthinkable, creating an abomination of desolation, pig's blood in the sanctuary. But the moral of the story is this: God is showing us a picture of what can be achieved when we step forward, not in our own strength, but in the wisdom that comes from standing in the power of God. We, like the Maccabees, we, like Jehoshaphat, will see the victories and the miracles that come when the source of our power comes from God, because the Lord wants us to be connected to this source of power, not one that comes from a human resource, but one that comes from the resources of heaven. Like Zerubbabel, we must learn that it's the power to build, the power to accomplish, the power of the Spirit of God at work in us and through us. This is the necessary resource for God's work. The Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, and God promises Zerubbabel a rich resource of the Spirit of God to accomplish his work. When we will trust in God's resources instead of our own, whether they be great or small in the eyes of man, when we refuse to trust in these, we will enjoy the full supply of the Ruach HaKodesh. Now the rabbis also teach that this vision is prophetic and speaks to the coming of the Messiah, who will rule in the power of the Spirit, and that he will achieve a rule that extends to the entire earth, and he will infuse the world with his presence, because he will rule in the power of the Spirit. And that kind of relates to our role in society. You see, according to Jewish tradition, when we take the Hanukkah and light it, we place it in a window to declare the Hanukkah miracle for all who can see. Our God is a God who stands with his people, a God who brings light into the world. Interestingly, the rabbis talk about this, and they say that we have a role as priests to kindle the light of God in others, to ignite the flame of a person's lamp, so that he or she can ignite and inspire others. Sounds like a great model for evangelism and discipleship. It reminds me of what Peter says in 1 Peter 2:5. You yourselves, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Yeshua the Messiah. And as we light candles, we are reminded of this role in the world, the eternal calling of the Jewish people to be a light to the nations. In ancient times, the rabbis believed that the menorah, the symbol of God's presence with his people, the symbol of his presence within the sanctuary, was this, that Jerusalem was the light of the world. We know that this title belongs to Yeshua. He used it to describe his own ministry when he said, I am the light of the world. The one who, as John puts it, brings light to man, and who tells us in Matthew 5:15 that we are the light of the world. He tells us to be as lamps on a hill. You see, the one who came as light has filled us with that light, and we are called to share that light with others. How did the rabbis know this? How did they know to teach that the call of the Jewish person is to ignite the lamp in others, and that Yeshua would come and tell the whole world that this is the calling of all who will follow him? So this year, as I light my Hanukkah candles, I'm reminding myself and I'm reminding you that we are called to be the light and to bring light, because Yeshua, the light of the world, has come and filled us with light and has given us the power through the Ruach HaKodesh to live for God, to be connected to the power and the help that comes from heaven, which is by the Spirit, the Ruach of God. And he will provide all that we need. And then one day we will come face to face with our Messiah. We will see him, and he will be heaven's menorah, because he is called the lamp of heaven. I hope this has encouraged you, because as I began to think about these things, it has really encouraged me.